Today on Crunch Week, we're talking about the great wild goose chase for the Bitcoin creator, Facebook getting into drones through a possible M&A deal, and Twitter buying log cabins for its lunchroom. Hey there, I'm Colleen Taylor.
I'm Kim Cutler.
And I'm Alex.
Kim, your first time here on Crunch Week. Thanks for joining us at the round table.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you here. We're diversifying the roundup a little bit.
I know, it's fun. It's good stuff. First big story that everybody's been talking about is this wild goose chase for Satoshi Nakamoto, the founder, creator of Bitcoin. Newsweek put out a big cover story this week claiming that they had tracked him down. He's a 64-year-old retired physicist in a Los Angeles suburb, living very quietly. But now it's being contested that he's not actually the right Satoshi. What do you guys think?
Talk about having the wrong name and being in the wrong place. So what's the latest on this? Is it confirmed that he's not the guy?
Well, he's denied it. He's denied it. I mean, Felix Salmon wrote this really interesting piece this morning talking about the paradox of how you would actually prove whether he is or isn't, and the only way whether you could know if he was is if he did something like moved some Bitcoin from some of the very earliest accounts, or showed that he had some of the email correspondence with him and the other early Bitcoin collaborators. But since he's denied it,
and also the guy who initially posted Bitcoin on that forum back in the day, 2009. Said specifically that he was not that guy.
Right.
So
there is a small possibility. I mean, we at TechCrunch reached out to one of the moderators of that forum, and he said that that message did come from the person with the original email address who had made the post before in 2009. But of course, there's always a possibility that someone could have hacked into that, or that same person could be this man that was tracked down in Los Angeles.
I don't know. It just doesn't pass the smell test that it's him. I mean, there were these emails that were circulating around where he complained about like the metropolitan transportation system in Los Angeles, and somebody ran a side-by-side of those emails with some of Satoshi's emails around that time, and the language is totally different, and it showed that Dorian Nakamoto, who's the one that the Newsweek pointed out, just didn't have as strong a grasp of English, so it just didn't match.
Emails about trains and whatnot that had very kind of dodgy punctuation and grammar, I think, doesn't show the mind of someone who could build something as complex as Bitcoin. Not to be uncommon.
Not mine, just like grasp of English.
Well, that too. Yeah. It doesn't smell correct. But wasn't there a journalistic car chase involved with this somehow?
This entire thing has just been so embarrassing for the journalistic community, from the somewhat apparently weak reporting from Newsweek, irresponsible reporting in some ways, to dox this guy and show his home and his family.
A lot of it was just very circumstantial evidence. Like, she interviewed his family members who said, yeah, he's really smart, skeptical of government, very suspicious, secretive, and all these other personal qualities, which are fine. They might match, some of the things that we've seen in, the original Satoshi Nakamoto's behavior, but that doesn't make for proof.
And then once
that barely gives you intent. That's a very, very, very flimsy kind of connection.
Right. And then once the story comes out, as you said, there's this car chase throughout Los Angeles because she had pictured his house. It was very easy to track him down. She'd given basically the city in which he lived in.
Right.
And so all of these reporters who were really behaving like paparazzi showed up at his home.
What other incentive would they have if you were like a Los Angeles-based journalist? And this massive story shows up, the creator of Bitcoin, who's been, mysterious, no one has known his identity since the inception of the currency. If someone's making this, allegation that this is the guy, like, you could understand.
I can understand.
It looks really bad. It does.
The entire thing, because then people are chasing him down the sidewalks where he's repeatedly saying, I have nothing to do with Bitcoin. I have nothing to do with this. This is a 64-year-old man who's had a stroke before. He's had, I believe, a heart attack before. He looks completely overwhelmed by this entire situation. It was really hard to watch.
Okay, so finding the guy who made Bitcoin, good journalism. Finding the wrong guy, bad journalism. Then abusing the hell out of the wrong guy, circus. I mean, that's where this ended up. I mean, there's nothing wrong with finding the guy who invented Bitcoin. We should all be working on this. But the way Newsweek handled it, reported it, and then didn't correct it, and then allowed for this to happen, I think is a disgrace. But finding the guy, or doxing him as we now call it, I think that's not that bad of a thing.
Yeah, I guess you're probably right. But then, as Kim, you've reported so much on Bitcoin, does it really matter, if we find Satoshi Nakamoto? Bitcoin isn't just Satoshi.
Not to the end. Like, the community has taken on a life of its own at this point. But am I totally curious about who the creator is, what their long-term intent is, and whether what Bitcoin has grown into matches what they originally thought would happen.
Right.
I think those things are all really interesting questions.
Also, given how thin trading is of Bitcoin as a percentage of its total valuation, and his current slice of it, he could really mess with the price if he wanted to. If he wanted to sell quickly, if he hasn't already sold, that chunk that he's supposed to have, he could really cause the market to move. So I would love to know what his intentions are.
Or if it, as some people, like conspiracy theorists have speculated, what if it's like a government entity, and like that very much changes whether or not maybe users would want to participate in Bitcoin or not.
That would make the entire market look like the end of Mount Gox. So.
Right. So it is obviously a very exciting story, still developing. We'll probably know more next week. But another thing that TechCrunch broke this week is that Facebook is in talks to acquire a drone maker called Titan Aerospace, a drone startup out of New Mexico for around $60 million, a deal that hasn't been closed yet, but talks are ongoing. Facebook getting into drones.
This is to spread internet in other areas, correct?
This is just a solar, it could theoretically be used for that. The thing here is that this is a technology that has these drones that are solar powered that they could fly for days without needing fuel.
I thought it was years, actually.
Something like this.
Yeah, I think it's 65,000 feet and up to 5 years. Now, the rule is if it's over 60,000 feet, the regulations don't apply. So you get to kind of fly there and do whatever the hell you want. So that's why you want to keep them up there. Now, if they use these to spread internet, that means more people can be on Facebook, which means they can have more users. Yay. Google's doing something similar with balloons in Africa, I believe.
Project Loon.
Thank you. So, I mean, I get why Google's doing it. Facebook is not quite at the same scale or worth, but it's ballsy.
But this would be a huge deal.
But the thing is, like, both companies have reached at least 1 billion users, and the world population is so much larger than that, and there's so many places that the internet hasn't reached yet. And so now that these companies have gotten kind of quote unquote all the low-hanging fruit in the developed world and in emerging markets, how do you get internet to the rest of what could be their potential customer base.
Right, and this is a big thing that Mark Zuckerberg has been doing anyway with internet.org, and Facebook has been working to do. So it's not that surprising. In some ways, 60 million seems like a steal, especially with all these big deals.
Well, it depends on what the assets are we're looking at. Is there a lot of IP? Have they actually built anything? I think that Sarah Perez at TechCrunch wrote a story saying that investors were kind of balking at putting more money into the company given the long runway from today to revenue. And given that, 60 million may be too much in terms of what the company's actually worth. Facebook can afford it, though, of course.
There is some talk, and I think the reporting from TechCrunch is ongoing here, but that the technology from Titan is a little hand-wavy. There are some big question marks around what they've really produced, and so
And this goes back to the founder, which you've been working on, I think, recently.
Yeah, a bit. So the founder who's also the CTO, he, on the website there's no real information about him, but there are just some questions as to what they've really built and how possible this really is.
Is he a credible person, or are there kind of doubts about his character?
I don't know. You'll have to wait and see. I don't know.
After the show, we'll get back to work. And
right. We're actively working on this. But in general, I think people think, Facebook, this big company, drones, a little bit scary. I think that's why it caught
Well, why is Google
imagination.
and Ventures investing into Uber? Why are they working on driverless cars? I mean, these companies are building platforms that spread far, far from their core product offering. So they're looking probably 5, 10 years ahead, not just a couple of quarters. And you're right, 60 million is kind of a low price. I mean, they can afford to buy this and have it completely flop. I mean, they probably spent more than 60 million building Home, and that took off like a rock into a pond. So, I mean, I think they can, sorry, bad analogy, but I mean, they can afford to do this just for fun if they want to. It's cool though, because it's drones right now. I mean, everyone's, hot and bothered about drones, but in reality, it's just kind of a gamble, I'd say.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But there are gambles every week by these companies, I guess.
Yes.
Speaking of which,
oh my.
Twitter this week, a kind of fun story, a kind of strange story. Twitter bought some 19th century log cabins from rural California to install in their headquarters here in downtown San Francisco to use as lunchrooms. And Alex,
you cannot improve on what you just said. I mean, that's what happened, and it's perfect.
Alex, I loved your headline, though, which was, can you repeat it here?
It was something like, after losing $500 million in Q4, Twitter buys 2 log cabins.
Right.
Because their net loss in Q4 of 2013 was like 511 due to like stock-based expenses. So they had a non-GAAP profit of 2 cents per share, but their net income on a GAAP basis was really bad. And so it was a mean headline. I was trying to be a dick, and it worked, but. I mean,
what kind of comments did you get on that story?
I don't read comments.
Okay.
I think in general, the commentary on this story, I don't think Twitter was expecting that they would get any negative PR from this because they're public relations person.
I mean, we're in a place where any startup that does anything kind of seemingly frivolous for their office, like they're going to get a little bit of flack for it.
Right.
I mean, you've done all the Cribs episodes, right? Like
right.
there was that the control room at was it Airbnb?
Yes, yes. Airbnb has a ton of
And
this
then the Oval
stuff
Office
in
at
there.
GitHub.
Yes, there are a lot of things like this. I think in general that Twitter thought that this was kind of a cool thing, and that they're buying these historical artifacts and they're keeping them in their headquarters, and it's going to be a place for them to eat lunch. But
Twitter
people
is
think
taking
it's weird.
a lot of dings for, I would call, over-pampering their employees. I mean, ValueAct has been kind of brutal about the lunches they serve there. And you know what? I don't care. Do your own thing. But I mean, I'm not going to not giggle at you if you're being silly. And buying log cabins to put inside your HQ so you can have different lunch environments.
I think we should have a log cabin for Crunch Week to be inside of, and we could just huddle in it.
What if we did an igloo instead, like a multicolored igloo?
I like these ideas.
We can huddle around a little fire. I don't know. The point is, I mean, it's your money. Spend it the way you want to. I just don't have to like it. And buying log cabins is just.
Well, if you're a shareholder,
I'm not.
I know you're not a shareholder, but if you were a Twitter shareholder, would you have a problem?
Yeah.
With
I think
log
this
cabins?
is the issue because, as you said, this is not a profitable company yet, and they're spending money like the Googles of the world, which is
generate
a wildly
billions of dollars in yearly profit. So
Exactly.
I mean, if you make that kind of money, buy drones. Fuck it, right?
make it rain.
Make it rain all over Silicon Valley. But when you lose a lot of money and you're having huge growth issues and you took a 25% hit after your last quarterly report, buying 2 log cabins, I think, could indicate to the public a lack of focus on the fundamentals of your business. And you are essentially just a cash flow now. You're a public company, I'm sorry. You're not the cool kid on the block, you're public. And now you're public with 2 log cabins.
Right. I don't think
Congrats.
they'll be buying a 3rd log cabin at
No.
least with this backlash. So
Maybe
there's
they'll
at
buy
least
Legos.
But we could get a log cabin.
we could. I think AOL is profitable, or maybe not.
We can't afford 1 log for a log cabin, I don't think.
True.
Sadly.
We'd probably have to build our own log cabin. The trees outside on the street.
We're going to IKEA, like, can we get a log cabin, please?
Right.
There's more in our
Put
budget.
it on layaway or something. But
Next week will be log cabin edition.
next week, tune in for Log Cabin Edition. But that's about all the time we have for this week. So thanks for watching.